And welcome to the Maria Liberati Show, where food meets art, travel, and life. And I'm excited today. I have Clarissa Burt on, who, gosh, I could stay here all day and just mention all the things you've done. But I'll just introduce you today. People can look you up online and they'll find out lots about you. But I'll introduce you as super author and producer and gosh, so many things. But today you're going to talk about this wonderful book that I just love the message called The Self-Esteem Regime. And
Yes,
yes, so and that's out now, right? Was
it
it
is. It's
just
been out for the last, yeah, the self-esteem regime has been out for the last 2.5 years. And the entire time with is one of my crowning moments that I love to sort of subtly brag about is that it is in the Barnes and Noble
oh, that's
stores on the
wonderful.
shelves for the last 2.5 years, right next to Tabitha Brown, Brene Brown, Clarissa
Oh,
Burt, Dr. Deepak Chopra, and Dr. Joe Dispenza, all on the same shelf. And I'll tell you, Maria, it was a shock to me as a
uh-huh,
first-time author, but I have to really give a lot of credit to the gentleman that helped me write the book, who is a phenomenal literary agent.
uh-huh.
And yeah, so that all happened
That
two and a
is
half.
something you should brag about, definitely. That's wonderful, so exciting.
Yeah.
So tell us how you got the idea for this book, to do this book.
Yeah, I think it was just a perception that I had a perception of certain people in my life, and they had a completely different perception of of
Uh-huh,
themselves. And so that was a little frustrating to me. It started back with my mother, for example. Young girls look up to their moms, and mom, I don't have the pictures here with me right now, but mom was a lovely, lovely, beautiful woman, and never wanted her picture taken because she came out horrible in pictures and all. So as a young girl, I'm watching all of that happen,
uh-huh,
and my grandmother, who was another just a lovely woman and didn't need to lose an ounce, but was convinced she needed to lose weight, took 2 diet pills one day, choked on them,
oh,
perforated her esophagus, and spent the following 6 weeks in the hospital. So I thought that I just would look at her and grandmom, you didn't need to lose an ounce, and you're lovely. What is it that that you don't see in yourself that I see in you? And I found that to be really frustrating.
uh-huh.
I already, as a young girl, started to feel this like rah-rah session inside of me that just wanted to kind of go shake these women and tell them how fabulously wonderful they were. And,
Yes.
and then I realized that, it was something that was coming from the tribal background. We had our friends as well. So our friend groups were sort of forming us. Our educative institutions were forming us. Sometimes even our faith was forming us in certain ways that may not have completely and totally served us in our greater good. When I started to move out and to model, I was modeling around the world and meeting some lovely, lovely, beautiful girls. And I noticed even in them, you would think that the girls, that just because they're prettier, they would have more self-esteem. Well, it didn't work out that way. It doesn't work that way. So I found out quickly that self-esteem doesn't discriminate, and that it really is something that you are a work in progress, and you definitely need to work on when it comes to your personal development and your self-improvement.
Uh-huh. Wow. Yes, it's such an important message. And I know, especially for the teens growing up
Mhm.
today, there's so many issues with this, and I'm not sure what's going on, but I know from a lot of friends that have teens, there's a lot of issues going on. Maybe it's social media, but
Yeah.
it's probably all of the above of what
Yes.
you
Oh yeah.
know, what you mentioned.
No, no, most definitely, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's a
Yes.
really, really huge topic right now. Because
Yes.
as far as the CDC is concerned, and other metrics that we're getting out of even our own government, we've got 50% of our kids, and I want to start including the guys here too. Let's bring the boys in because they
Yes.
are also, they are just as much at risk as far as low self-esteem is as our girls are, and so 50% of our kids. And when I say kids, I'm talking about, we go from elementary school to college because,
Mhm.
they're kids to me. They're children to me anyway.
Yes,
And
yes,
so as far as statistics are concerned, these kids are, they are 50% of our kids are either depressed, they're anxious, they're thinking of committing suicide, or they have committed suicide. And these
yes,
numbers
yes.
they're truly alarming. And so that, numbers from the CDC, our own Attorney General came out last April, actually
Mhm.
ago and said, we've got a youth mental health crisis. And yes, most of this is due to social media, and it's due to continual comparing yourself to others, your
Uh-huh.
perception of yourself opposed to your perception of what everyone else wants you to believe about them. So that is very, something we have to keep in mind. And the filters. So we've got the Dove, by the way, Dove self-esteem, their self-esteem, what is this called? Oh gosh, self-esteem campaign. There you go. Is
Yes.
that have been working on, it has been working years and years and years with, young girls and their mental health and their self-esteem, came out last year with, saying no to the filters. So hashtag no filters,
Oh, yes.
turn your back, hashtag, like, don't use these filters because they are creating an unreal reality for what you think you need to be looking like in order to be accepted, when who you are and what you look like is just fine. So
Uh-huh.
it's a fine line when we're talking about teen girls, because we all remember being teen girls and wanting to be accepted and wanting to be loved and wanting to be attractive and want to be all of those things. But I also think that we have to be teaching our kids what it is to have happy, healthy self-esteem, how to achieve it, where that personal development comes in, whether it be groups, courses, classes, YouTube videos, documentaries, books. Because back in my day, and you may remember, Maria, as well, we had the three bookstores. We had Walden Books, Border Books, and Barnes.
Yes.
And back in the corner somewhere, you may remember, there's this little teeny section called self-help.
Uh-huh.
That
Yes.
self-help section, Maria, had probably 40 to 50 books on it. No big deal. Today, when you walk into the only bookstore that still remains, which is Barnes and Noble, first of all, it's $1 billion industry now, but it's rows upon rows upon rows upon rows upon rows upon rows of personal development help.
Oh, wow.
So truly, there's really no excuse, if you will, to not be getting the kind of education that we need to be, to sort of be veering these kids and guiding our children into. Now, I'm not a parent, so I
Right.
know that
Me
I
either.
don't want to sit on any pulpit
Right,
where
right.
parenting is what has got to be, as far as I'm concerned, one of the most difficult jobs on the planet.
Yes, you're
Does
right.
come with the manual, and I take off my hat. So let me preface by saying that.
Yes,
What
yes.
I also will say is that we need to get the devices out of these kids' hands. We need to be connecting more, even if it's that hour around the kitchen table, even if it's you chop the celery, you set the table, whatever that all is. And maybe
Exactly.
it's 1 hour of nobody has devices. Let's get back to the table. Let's get back to how was your day, and really mean it. Um,
Exactly.
so yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a huge part of what I like to talk about as well.
Yes, I've just noticed that all these like friends and people that I and acquaintances, there's all, excuse me, that there are so many mentioning this stuff going on with their teens. And I'm like, I don't remember that when I mean, of course there were
Yeah.
issues, but I don't remember it being so prevalent. So back then, I'm like, I was just asking a friend of mine, do you remember that this was happening like this much back when we were growing up? No, I
Yeah,
don't.
because the bullying became fast and frequent, and it
Uh-huh.
became super easy. And there were also apps that you could use that would make you anonymous in order to bully a girl in your class. And so when you've got, all 20 other girls, and in the pack doing the
Uh-huh.
same thing against one girl, it's truly damaging. It's a lifetime. I've spoken to some people at our age that say, I remember being bullied, and I will tell you, it devastated me. And it took me, I don't even know if I'm still out of the bullying that I went through in high school.
Exactly.
Those kind of things. So that kind of, let's call it the mean girl syndrome, or for
Yes,
lack of a
yes.
word, is truly something that, we've got to be more mindful of. And now apparently when the kids or the parents go to the schools and say, hey, listen, this is happening, it's really, they turn a blind ear to the
They
parents.
do. That's
So
what I understand that also that and I'm not a parent also. And so, but these are just coming from friends and acquaintances and, the stuff that I'm hearing, it's
yeah.
just unbelievable. So do you have, Clarissa, do you have some kind of like a regime or tips or things to follow? I'm sure you do in the book. Maybe you can tell
Absolutely.
us about some of that.
Yeah, well, first of all, the book is called A Regime because a regime is an organized way of doing things. So what
Right.
I decided to do is not make this a book where you're going to read about self-esteem. You're going to actually do the work. You're going to do,
Mhm.
it's like a manual. So I call it a manual, a mission, and a movement. The self-esteem really wants to be, you as a singular person doing the job, but then also entering into the collective and maybe potentially even righting some of the wrongs that you see. And I'll explain. So the
Mhm.
first chapter is release. So all the things we were taught were etched in stone, all the generational traumas, all the things our peer groups taught us, all the things that we learned along the way, wherever we did. Again, as I said before, may not always serve our greater good. It may
Mhm.
not be exactly what, what we that we want to perpetuate in our lives.
Right.
So that is the ground zero piece, and probably the most difficult chapter in the book is not only, first of all, the most difficult chapter, and where you really are going to have to be perseverant and courageous is the biggest word of all, is by understanding that, life probably isn't totally working. It feels a little uncomfortable, and you want to, here's what I like to say. I want to be a better person tomorrow than I am today. And so what do I need to do today to make sure that happens, right? Because as I said, we are a constant work in progress. So get rid of all the things that, or some of the things that aren't working for you, the things that we were taught. And that's where we start with chapter 1. Chapter 2 is rebuild. So going from ground zero and starting to put up again, laying the slab, putting up the framework, all of those things that are in the book. You'll see that there are different, in each chapter we have case studies, we've got affirmations, we've got Clarissa's Corner, we deal with daily demons, we journal, there's all the exercises and things that will actually get you to actually start, movement toward what's next. And so that's kind of what the chapter number 3 is, responsibility. Each chapter begins with a reword, responsibility. So really getting deep down in yourself, and where am I taking responsibility for me?
Uh-huh.
Where am I shirking responsibility? Where am I placing blame? And then reel all that back in, because again, this work comes with, when we start to do this, I want everyone to understand there is no shame, there is no blame, and there is no guilt around the work that you will be doing on yourself. So, let's get in there, let's start, start doing the work. And then we end the last chapter with reciprocal, which for me, Maria, was always one of the more difficult ones. I love giving it. I love doing it. I love making everybody happy. And I love, complimenting. I love all of that because it makes me feel good. But what I didn't realize is that, on the other side, people would say to me, and then I remember one day I was complaining, oh, I always have to do everything. And I forget exactly what it was. Gosh, I would love to be able to get some help. And one of the people, one of the persons in that group said, but Clarissa, we don't know what to do for you because you're doing it all. We don't know how to help you because you don't allow yourself to be helped. And I went, ding dong. That was like, illumination moment, and
Yes.
bright light. So I went, okay, well, gee, thank you so much for that feedback. I really appreciate that. I'm so used to being a doer, 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 that I didn't understand how important it was, not only for me to receive, but for others to be giving to me. So
Uh-huh.
that's how the 12th chapter in the book, we do that work as well. The other really cool thing that we do in the book is something that we call mirror therapy. And Louise Hayes started that in her works, and then Jack Canfield, who's the other part of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series with Mark Victor Hansen, they use this in their works as well, and that's where we actually become our own rah-rah session in the mirror. Because there are two ways to approach a mirror, Maria. One of them is to look at the mirror when we're primping and fixing and doing all those things, and we
Mhm.
thank the mirror for that. And then there's looking into the mirror, which is a whole different process when you stop and you start talking and saying the things that you want to say to yourself, and you're looking at yourself and it's going into your soul. It's some of the most, really, I think it's some of the most, it's the most difficult probably exercise, but definitely the most incisive.
Wow. Wow. That's wonderful. That sounds so. And is this the one thing I was thinking of while you were telling us about everything? Is this book like something a teen could take and,
Oh yeah.
do? Oh, okay. So it is something for
Definite,
teens,
yes. Yeah.
adults
And it's
also.
funny because when I'll show you the book again, when I got the book,
Right.
you'll see that it's made up of different triangles, if you will.
Yes,
When I
yes.
first got this book, the book was pink, yellow, and orange.
Uh-huh.
Beautiful. Colors were beautiful.
Yeah,
And it definitely jumped out from the shelves. I will tell you
yeah,
that. It was very feminine looking. And I
right.
really wanted to include our men with this. And so
Exactly.
I asked the only thing I asked the publisher, and I said, please, can we make the cover blue so that gentlemen will pick it up? And when I dropped the book last year in Italy, and I was, out on tour with the book, half of the room, invariably, half of the room was male. And I was listening yesterday to some other statistics, I forget where, but different statistics about male suicide right now. It's again off the charts. The pressures are too great. The division is what it is because men are being bashed all over the place. Yeah, I don't know if we won't get into all of that. That's a
No,
whole
no, but you're absolutely right. Yes.
People are hurting. Let me just put it that way.
Yes.
Therefore, the personal development, the self-improvement, and doing the work on yourself, I think, is the closest way to come back home, to come back to center, to really understand who you are, what your purpose is in this world, and also to learn how to deal with the pain and the trauma, because that pain and trauma it's so huge, and guys especially. Girls, we can jump on a plane, sit next to somebody, and 3 hours later, we know we've got a new best friend because we've talked to each other about our entire life. They know
Yes.
they know our entire childhood, but guys don't do that.
No.
They don't communicate in that way. So I really wanted to open that portal, if you will, that page, that way
Uh-huh.
for guys to say, again, no shame, no blame, no guilt. If you're in pain, we need to talk about that. We need for you to bring that up so that you can deal with it. And it's again, as I said before, this work is not always the easiest, and you will need courage. But when you start down the tunnel, if you will, that dark seems so dark,
Right.
tunnel, when you start down and you get closer and closer and closer as you do the work. That light at the end of the tunnel becomes so big, so bold, so bright, so beautiful.
Right,
When you
right.
finally are out on the other side, it doesn't mean yeehaw, I'm 100%. It means it was definitely worth it for me to do the work. And that's where, that's the way I like to direct people when we're talking about happy, healthy self-esteem.
Exactly. So it's all about probably breaking out of our comfortable habits that we've just kind of kept doing all of our lives and thinking in a new way so that you incorporate all these. Wow, that's great. Yes, yes, so many people need this right now. So that's great. So is it translated into different languages? I know you said you were just in Italy.
Translatable. Yes, it was
Wow.
translated into It's
Oh,
translated
that's
into Italian. It came out a year and a half ago. And in fact, right after you, I'll be speaking again by Zoom to a group of Italians that are waiting to talk about the book there as well with my editor. Yeah, and it's also available on Amazon straight across the board in every country.
right,
But
right.
that's really, when you ask why I do the book, I do the book because
Yes,
I know that, apart from the real reasons as to, what was the catalyst that started me thinking the way I was thinking, from mom to
right.
grandma to all the beautiful girls that I worked with, on the runway and in the modeling industry back in the 80s. And so again, the correlation between those, it was, here are the most beautiful women in the world. There's my beautiful mother. Why are not all models, forgive me, just, some of the girls, some of that toxicity, that they were bringing along with them. And so, in their relationships or relationships with others, and certainly relationship to self. So,
Uh-huh,
I wanted to make sure that this book was, again, a manual,
uh-huh.
something you could read, but whereby the work was there for you. In other words, sit down, get your journal, do the work, make sure that, you're consistent with it, and it might get uncomfortable. If it gets uncomfortable, put it down for a couple of days, think through it and then pick it up again.
Exactly. That's great. Well, that's good. It's something, a nice summer project too, if you want to just, get started on something and to work on yourself. But definitely, I think that's something that's really, really needed right now. That sounds wonderful. So you are doing, I know you have another interview. And I guess I was going to ask, where can people find you? Are you doing any book tours, or tell us?
Okay, well, for the moment, the book tours I did right after the book came out. So
Uh-huh.
I did Barnes and Nobles across the United States. For the moment, you can find the book in Barnes and Noble. You can find
Uh-huh.
it on their website, and definitely on Amazon. Amazon, we've got it in the soft copy. We've got it on Audible, and we've got it in Kindle. So it's digital as well.
So it's everywhere. And do you have, I'm sure you do, you must have a website. Do you have a
Yeah.
website? Oh,
Clarissa
okay.
Burt.
So people can just,
ClarissaBurt.com.
and are you on Instagram, Facebook, anything if people want to look
All of
you
them.
up?
I'm
Okay,
everywhere.
yes. So everybody can look up, look, join, follow Clarissa, and we will be putting this as a podcast. And then for those of you listening now, it will be also on YouTube. So you'll see the video in a couple of weeks. We'll have the video up also.
That's
Great.
awesome. So I'd like
That's
to leave everybody with something, if that's all right with you. Can I leave with a
yes,
last
yes,
thought?
yes.
So, that we often hear about, self-esteem 101. Don't compare yourself to anybody else. Don't never compare yourself to anyone else. And invariably, we do find ourselves doing that, especially because of social media. So what I like to say is, we always think that the grass is greener on the other side.
Uh-huh,
And so there are two things that I like to proffer there, and that is the grass is always greener where you water it.
uh-huh.
So be really, really careful about your thought process and all of that. And is it really truly grass on the other side, or is it astroturf? So is it fake and is it plastic? Be really, really careful about what you're taking in that you believe is true and may not necessarily be. The other thing, as we often hear about, I am enough, you are enough, we are enough, everybody's enough. So I went and I looked up enough, and the definition of enough, Maria, is only as much as is required. So by definition, the word enough isn't enough.
No.
So the new mantra that I'd like to leave your listeners with is this: I am so much more than enough.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love that. So positive and so uplifting. I hope everyone takes that to heart and uses that. That's wonderful. Yes, I've never looked up the word enough, so definitely very enlightening. Very, very enlightening. That's
Important.
wonderful, Carissa.
Yeah, thanks. It was such an important piece. I went, what the heck does it not, what even is enough? And who is,
Yes.
tell me what enough is. Is there a panel of enough people? Like the people that tell you, like, what is enough and who decides what enough is? And so I took a deeper dive just on the word. And
Huh?
when I came up with only as much as is required, I went, hold the bus here. So that's just wrong, So I
Right.
love that. Because as a new mantra, I really do believe that if you were just to write that down on a little Post-it note and keep it beside you all the time, I am so much more than just
Yes.
enough.
Definitely. And that's a great tip too. I know sometimes I do for motivation, I'll write stuff and I keep it with me and I just keep like concentrating on that. So that's a good tip. Yep, to write, definitely write that down. And I love your suggestion. You're basically telling people to be authentic, because I think that's the problem. People aren't authentic because of what they're seeing, and they're just trying to be other things that is not the real them. And everybody is a wonderful piece of art, themselves, and they need to
Yeah.
express that and to be themselves. But
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah. You got it.
Definitely.
Thank,
Clarissa,
thank you.
thank you so much. It was so wonderful. And please stay in touch, and if you're, update us if you'd like to come on again. I'd love to have you on again.
Thank you so
Thank you
much, Maria.
so much success with everything. Come along with me and discover where food meets art, travel, and life.